Today we have the pleasure of hearing from Kimberly O'Donnell and Ben Miller. Kimberly is the Chief Fundraising Officer here at Bonterra. She is an innovator known for piloting new products and coaching methodologies designed towards more effective technology and performance optimization. A certified fundraising coach, Kimberly leads Bonterra's consulting program, which focuses on leadership, coaching for nonprofits, and corporate social responsibility programs. In addition to working in SaaS and the nonprofit sector, Kimberly has worked in education, healthcare, financial services, and the luxury retail markets. And we are also joined by, like I mentioned, the wonderful Ben Miller, who is an entrepreneur drawing upon degrees in mathematics and systems engineering to advance applied data sciences in the nonprofit sector. Ben Miller is the Senior Vice President of Data Analytics here at Bonterra and has helped raise billions of dollars from tens of millions of donors for thousands of organizations over his career. And Ben serves on the Research Council for the AFP and is the Vice Chair of the Fundraising Effectiveness Project. So, with that, I want to pass it to our two speakers this afternoon, Kimberly and Ben. Thank you guys so much for joining us this afternoon.
Thank you, Ashley. And it's great to see all of these awesome folks on our webinar today. Hi to you all from all over the country. Ben and I are going to be chatting with you about how to communicate your impact and really how to do that in a way that will help you boost long-term support and really begin to think strategically about ways that you can build more data analysis into the work that you're doing, more strategy for the long term into what you're doing, and also leveraging some of the new awesome resources that are available to you, like AI, and just some other little tips and tricks from the trade. So we're looking forward to this next hour, having this chat with you, this conversation about it. Ben and I have done a few webinars, maybe more than a few webinars together over time. So our flow, as you will see, is to kind of go back and forth and make this more of a conversation. As we do that, we ask that you go ahead and type in any questions into the Q&A, and we'll take them as we come. We do like for this to be very conversational, and I like to have what I call a chatter size, right? Like where we're able to go in, the exercise is to chat and to have that back and forth. So let's talk about what we're going to be focusing on today. One is why and how data can work for you. So how to use that data to show impact. We all can find lots of data within our donor management systems, our CRM platforms, lots of other technology that we're using. That's great. But really, when it becomes most usable, it's when we can show the real impact that our organizations are making and be able to communicate that out to the community and to funders and to your supporters and your partners. A lot of times you got to get your board on board with when you're talking about impact and really focusing on data. So we'll have some strategies for that. We'll talk about how to increase donations, volunteer hours, and engagement, because that's what a lot of organizations want to do. And there are lots of ways that we can leverage data and some cool tactics to do that. We'll dive into storytelling and what's working today. And then we'll also talk about using AI properly in your communications. AI is very hot right now as a buzzword, not just in general, but within the fundraising and engagement space. And Ben has some great advice for you on how to thoughtfully approach your AI usage and how you can build from it. We'll have other tips and questions as we go. So we can't wait to get started. Ben, I would love if you could kick us off by just talking a little bit about Bonterra's own impact report that we have and how we look at data.
Absolutely. And thank you, Kimberly. It's a pleasure to be here presenting with you. I want to harken back to the slides a couple bit ago, and you saw that my picture hasn't been updated in a couple years. And so I feel like I am going to not update it until all the hair is gray. But I also, but the reason I'm harkening back to that is the bio that Ashley shared. It's not about sort of a boast. It's about, when your work is able to impact good in such a way, it really makes you feel good about like what you are doing in society. And I think in the same way, this slide here is not a boast about sort of Bonterra's breadth and depth of what we have, but it's a celebration of all of the things that we are able to achieve through Bonterra. It helps us as employees of Bonterra feel good about what we're doing. It helps us feel, I can speak for myself. When I step into the job, it makes me feel good that I'm actually doing something that's going to help somebody else somewhere else. And I don't know, I'm just trying to keep level set there. So while I jump in and sort of talk about the 20,000 plus customers that we have, or the 300,000 nonprofits that we reach through all of our different software, it's really incredible to think about the ecosystem that we have, and the $12 billion in grants, and 6 million lives touched probably is the number one thing that I want to focus in on, because if you can think about that, like, just, that's incredible. But to Kimberly's point, I'm sorry, I was going off on my chatter size here. To Kimberly's point was basically, with all of this data in today's landscape, um, there's a ton of noise coming at us, right? I mean, we were even just having a discussion ahead of this where Kimberly was asking me, hey, did you like that meeting the other week? And I was like, oh, I don't even know. There's so many things, like, there's so much coming at us, that identifying the signal from the noise becomes super critical. And that is going to be a theme that we're going to talk through as this presentation goes on. But that's where I'd say, when we talk about data, which we're about to, is finding out what the critical points are that you need to see, and ignoring the other stuff. So sorry, I that was a much longer answer than you had asked for, Kimberly, but
No, but that's a really great point, is how do we cut through the noise, and what can we infer, and what can we take with us as not just best practices, but next practices. And that's one of the things that we are so blessed, Ben and I are blessed with in our roles here at Bonterra. I oversee our coaches, and we have coaches that are working one-on-one with charities, thousands of charities across the country, and we are able to bubble up some pain points, some curiosities, really neat things. And so we're excited to share that with you and really talk about how these can be applied to your own organization, and what not just best looks like, but what next can look like, and how we can sometimes get out of our own way, as we are trying to bring change to our organization, because change management is also another big thing. But Ben, walk us through, start out by level setting on where we are, as we look at fundraising and volunteering here in the US, and kind of take us on that journey to level set, and then we'll dive into some strategies and approaches.
Sure, and I'll caveat by saying I really don't like having to do this part, because it's the sky is falling and I feel like Chicken Little, and I don't want to be sort of throwing all of that out into the world. But the truth is, if you look at these different sources of data, which are shown here, coming from a Bureau of Statistics, from AmeriCorps, and the Fundraising Effectiveness Project, we're seeing a decline in giving and participating in social and civic engagement, and it's becoming fewer people doing more, right? So it's not just that we have less volunteers. The work that's needed to be done, which, if we look at the next slide, is increasing, and so there's this overall decline in sort of the engagement, and so the fewer volunteers have to do more work, the fewer donors have to give more money, and these are trends that we're seeing across the space. And I wonder too if you all on the call see this as well. But this, when you put that in juxtaposition of this slide, where costs are going up, capacity is going down, it's really, really painting a grim picture for nonprofits. Tap on top of that all the noise that we're seeing too. It's really hard to then discern between what's good and what's bad. So the next couple slides are going to be around the FEP, which show you, like, as far as like fundraising is concerned, what are we seeing? And we're seeing a decline in 2023. So this is the most recent. For those who are not familiar with the Fundraising Effectiveness Project, it is a collaboration between Giving Tuesday and AFB, and it is over 20,000 nonprofit organizations from data providers, anonymized, and tracking trends over the years. And so on a quarterly basis, reports are released, and the most recent one was the fourth quarter of 2023, and we saw a decline in overall donations. And Kimberly, I know you have the fortune of being able to work directly with nonprofits and through the coaching and whatnot. Are you seeing this sort of same trend? Now, an average is an average, right? There are going to be some that grow and some that decline, but what do you see?
Yeah, I mean, I agree. There are the declining organizations, and there's a worry about it. But I also think that there's also missed opportunity, because there are a lot of organizations that are going out to the same pool of people, expecting to either raise more money or strike even. It's not going to happen like that. If you keep on going out to the same people every time and asking for the same gifts, they either will give to you or they may go away. But we're not then sort of nurturing that pool of people and actually bringing in new prospects at a clip that will help offset any real loss. And we're going to dive into that. I know you're going to talk a little bit about that part, but that's the reality. Is I ask folks to think about what your donor retention looks like, and let's explore that a bit more, Ben, because I think that's probably where you're going with this too, right?
Yeah, and if we want to look exactly, and if you want to look at the next slide, the decline in donors is larger than the decline in dollars. But to your point, that like it's sort of by design. Like we do go after folks that are giving us the big gifts, and we don't create that big groundswell of donors, and that can be problematic. All right, so we're on to the leaky bucket, which is one of my favorite slides. But this is to put the fundraising effectiveness project numbers into like an actual. So if you had 1,000 donors in 2022, we would have retained 422 of them in 23. So that means 578 leaked through the bucket and became lapsed. They were lapsing donors. They gave in 2022, did not give in 2023. And so let's advance it a little bit more. What do? We can either throw in new donors, or we can reactivate lapsed donors. So the first one's 392 new donor acquisition. This is like from actual, if we had that theoretical 1,000 donors, what happened in the sector was 392 new ones came onto board and 136 lapse reactivated. So you can see there's a disparity. Nearly 4-to-1 is typically the ratio of lapse to new. And so it's always more expensive to acquire donors. So it's problematic. And then the back of the envelope gets you to that number that we were just looking at, which is like, if you take all the donors you lost and you can put on the donors you gain, you come to the actual loss or gain of the sector. And so this just sort of illustrating that in numbers to make those percentages actually kind of make sense. You can think about if you're 1,000 person organization that this is what you're facing. And so we saw a negative 4.9% decline in donors. So the next part of this is just going to tell you about what do you do. You can either add more water by acquiring more donors or reactivate more donors, or you decrease the size of the hole by improving your response and engagement, right? Those are the only things that you can do to combat these trends. And so, Kimberly, as you see the slides here, anything spark? If not, we can go to the next.
Yeah. Well, I know. So several years ago, my organization partnered with the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, and we actually went out. We tested a concept called subscription giving, and we did this where we took 50 small nonprofits and we equipped them with technology, sort of the tools, the Mad Lib style, appeals, phone scripts, all of these things, and went out and tested that if a nonprofit focused on bringing on new donors and having them subscribe to the charity, like a Netflix or like so many, the Blue Apron foods, like we're all as a consumer base so comfortable with subscriptions. But yet we as nonprofits are still talking about like give one time, donate now. And rather than showing that through subscribing to a charity, you could actually make a longer and deeper impact in the organization. So we went out with verbiage and tools and tested this concept. And the organizations that embraced it, went for it, they raised a lot more and they brought on a ton more donors, and they actually retained them at better rates because they treated their subscribers as subscribers. They gave them some unique content, a newsletter or regular communications just with an update on impact, and recognized them that way. And the pilot was so successful that we ended up doing it a second year and just had remarkable results. And so what is our takeaway from that? One, you gotta focus on donor retention, and donor retention has the ability to be a lot higher for you if you look at them as subscribers and you act like a subscription-based company that would be doing things to really retain their subscribers, sending out curated content. And so it's a different mindset that you can employ. And then when you do that, you may be surprised to see the numbers tick up, which is what we were able to see in just 2 years, that donor retention had really gone up quite significantly, from, around 40% to 70% retention of that pool of new donors. So some of the tactics you could take, are within our sector and then outside of our sector. Be aware of what retains people, and begin to nurture those curated networks. We want to take a quick poll with everyone and just kind of, now that you've seen what's going on with the state of the sector, let's talk a little bit about contributions and how they are for you right now.
And great takeaway about this recurring donations. Sorry, Ashley, didn't mean to talk about you.
No, it's okay. Go ahead.
No, that's it. I was just going to say, great point for the sustainers is one good takeaway. If you walked away, would be great. Increase your sustainers.
And as kind of answers are rolling in, it seems that a lot of people have experienced a decrease in their contributions this fiscal year. Some people about the same, but the majority have seen a decrease.
Yeah. So in line with what you're seeing across the board, right, Ben?
That's right.
So let's talk a little bit about the importance of data and fundraising analysis and why you're here. I really appreciate that all of you are taking time out of your busy day to really dive into this and spend time thinking about what you can be doing to increase your impact and using data to do it. So there's a lot of things, like fundraising analysis is really more about whether or not it's about way more than whether a nonprofit organization can meet their fundraising goal, right? With effective analysis, you can actually glean a whole lot more, right? You can learn how much money is coming in from your different channels and how that compares to your original goals. Are your original goals realistic? You can determine which campaigns are successful and not successful. It's a great thing to be able to have multiple campaigns and be doing some A/B testing so that you can really see what's working for you, what messages are resonating. You can also decide which campaigns and events you should be planning in the future. And, here's the thing. We as fundraisers, as nonprofit professionals, we often will take on more and we give up so very little. So it's also important to use, data and analysis to really look at what you can let go of. And it may be that you have an annual event that is tired and it is ready for retirement, right? And you could be bringing in new energy. Or you may want to be bringing in new potential donors, new supporters. And the event that you are having, let's say it's a golf tournament, is only, that's a small group of people who are going to want to go out and golf, during the week. And yet you might be a children's organization and you'd really love to be embracing more families. So your event might need to change in some ways so that you can be able to bring in more people and increase your brand. And, so those are some of the decisions that you can make when you have the data behind it. You can also see who your top donors are, who might be great to approach for a major gift or a legacy gift, right? A planned gift. Subscription gifts, being able to go out and say, hey, would you be a monthly donor, a sustainer for us? Also look at when you are raising money during the course of the year. And if all of your money is at the end, as at year end, how can you begin to spread that out a bit more? What should your campaigns look like so that you can bring in more sustainable money during the entire year? And then also just hidden successes that you can use as talking points with your board. knowing who your lapsed donors are and how you could focus on them, knowing and understanding the demographics of your current donor pool and what you might want them to look like in the future. Who we have as donors today isn't always who we want our future donors to be. And so we can begin to use data to uncover that. And then there's also the need to prioritize data and be able to show that in impactful ways for your stakeholders. And so it's very important to know how much money you raised overall and whether or not that hit the goal. But what does the pie look like? And is it what you thought it looked like? And is it what you would like it to be in future years? So all of these different things, and I'm not going to read through them, are really important and useful, but it's also critical for you to be able to prioritize what data is going to give you the most insight and is the easiest for you to share in a compelling way to your stakeholders. What do you think, Ben? How would you add on to that?
I would just suggest that for those of you who are not familiar with objectives tree, that they're one of my favorite ways to take data and make it into something that gets measured and moved. So the way you work with an objectives tree is that you go up it is why and down it is how. And so at the very top would obviously be the nonprofit's mission, right? And we could just look at the fundraising arm of the tree. And at the top of that is raising more money, right? And then as we looked at that leaky bucket, how do you do it? You either bring new people on or retain the old. And so you go all the way down to the metrics that are actually driving that mission. And that allows you to sort of figure out which of the different areas here that we're talking about are the most impactful on that top line number. And then that way it allows you to measure and manage those metrics in a way that moves your goal forward.
I love that. I also love the idea of having a scorecard that is regularly reported on. It's repeatable. It's easy to understand. One of the things that I think some organizations struggle with is they report on their fundraising activities, and it may just be very high level. Did we hit our goal or not? Okay, thanks. That's helpful. Sometimes it's, well, here are the different funding streams and that's where we are. But we miss, in some cases, like how it is looked over time. What does that horizon look like? Right? And a scorecard can help you begin to, what's the right word? I'm trained kind of comes to mind, but it's not, it's just sort of associate the data with the people, with their minds. Like when they see the same type of reporting all the time, then they get it. I understand what I'm looking at. And that means that they can begin to think more deeply, ask better questions. They can better understand what you are accomplishing, right, with that data. So what should be on a scorecard? There's lots of things, certainly your top line information at different what should you show your staff versus your board versus other stakeholders are things that you'll want to think through. But I encourage you to also share that scorecard regularly and have the red, yellow, green so people know how it's trending each quarter, trending year over year, right? Like those are really useful insights. And it can be simple red, yellow, green that you're showing, but when your staff is able to see that, then they also can become more invested in the outcome of fundraising too. Oh, I see we're not really doing well. We've gone 2 quarters and we're yellow. What can I do to help with that? Those questions won't come up unless you share the data with folks.
And Kimberly, I am noticing that we are at 26 minutes. So I know we've got a lot ahead of us. I'm thinking maybe our pace needs to be picked up. So I'm gonna try to do my part as well. So if I start talking fast, that's why.
Yes. All right. So we've got a quick poll for folks. Ashley, if you could pop it up. So out of this list, what's your greatest challenge? Is it operating costs? Is it your staff having the capacity to meet the needs that you have in place right now? Is it a lack of resources? Meaning when we say resources, it's not just dollars, it's just having the tools and the talent in place to help you deliver on your mission. Is it that you just really struggle with being able to understand how to measure impact and outcomes? What do we have, Ashley? What are folks saying?
Yeah, as answers are rolling in here, it looks like the overwhelming majority is staff capacity. It seems like more than half of responses are at staff capacity being one of their greatest challenges. Sometimes there's a lot, but that looks like the biggest one for folks.
Yeah. Okay. So that also fits with what we were seeing in overall survey data. Let's dive into getting your board on board. Part of it is understanding who makes the decisions. Are these decisions that you as an executive director or a development officer are able to make, or do you need to go to your board? I love, the reminder here at the bottom that the shared role is in having that strategic plan, that fundraising, that annual fundraising plan reviewed, because the board has fiduciary responsibility to the organization. And so it's important for them to understand what your fundraising looks like, and how the organization is being evaluated. So remember what you need to ask of your board and then what sits with you. And I challenge you by saying, what kind of bi-directional flow are you creating to help your board come to you with new ideas and really more deeply understand your fundraising and engagement initiatives? For a board to get on board, they need to feel interested. They need to feel like they're getting all the information that they need. They want to feel like they have transparency with you. And they want it to be easy. So these are some things, and I won't read through all of them, but these are some, and you're going to be getting the slides later. These are some things that you can do. And in some cases, you may want to share this with your board to say, hey, I'm going to give you an elevator pitch and some impact statements. And I'm going to I can show you where you can find it with all of your other board resources, so that it's not just something that they take in a stack of papers or they've gotten in a bunch of emails or in an email and they just don't remember where it is. We want to be able to make these things very easy for them. And in some cases, you may want to do some practicing with them, encourage them, to meet with you. It'd be awesome to meet with your board members, your executive director, if you're the fundraising officer, maybe you all have a meeting with each of your board members each year or small groups of them to really talk about the fundraising in a more casual way and to practice some of those pitches, some of those testimonials that you have, right? And really kind of help them understand their roles and have them become more interested in fundraising. One of the things that I did in the past that helped me a whole lot was I had individual reports, board reports that I would create for each board meeting. They were semi-monthly. So I would put together an individual report that showed the gift that the giving for the year. And I compared it to what they had given in past years or in the last year so that they could actually see whether or not they'd given more or less because they forget. And I was at a foundation and my donors, my board members thought often that they had given more than they actually had. And so this was a wonderful way for me to be able to say, Dr. So-and-so, I really appreciate that you've believed that, I appreciate the giving that you've made. Let me show you what it has been over the past few years. So they would get this in an envelope. So it was private to them. And that was on the front. On the back side, I had a comparison of total giving by the board. And I showed that year over year. And then in the bottom part, I actually had some takeaways. Here are ways that you can help us over the next 2 months. And I might have an event date, or I might have, please, encourage more attendees to our gala, or, hey, we have this coming up. Can you send an email? Can you do thank you calls? Right? But I would give them tangible things that they could do so that they knew what to do, because sometimes we don't know what we don't know. So those are some ideas. Another thing that I want to talk about is an innovation fund. I'm really hot on this right now. There are a lot of organizations who wish that they could do more creative things. We as a sector really are risk adverse in trying out new technology, initiating new things, just kind of going out of our comfort zones because we have donor dollars that we don't want to risk misusing. But to learn and to innovate, sometimes we are going to fail. And an innovation fund creates a safe space of dollars for you to go out and test new fundraising ideas, maybe a new program idea. It allows your staff to come to you with ideas. Hey, I know that we have $10,000 in our innovation fund this year, $50,000 in there. And I have an idea that I'd love to put forward for use of those funds. Also, if you go to your board or to your, or to the general public and you say, I have an innovation fund and it is strictly for new ideas and things that we want to pursue where we may fail, you may be surprised at how many people want to donate to that, because that's you showing that you're thinking about next, you're willing to take risks, and those dollars are directly going to go to you pushing the envelope. Okay, leveraging your board really quick. There are some very easy things that you can do to involve your board. There are some more challenging things here. These are ideas you can go back and look at later. But leverage your board more. There's tons of things that they can be doing. As I said, schedule regular check-ins with those members. Look at how you can foster a diverse board in every way, so that you have a wonderful balanced group of skill sets and expertise to draw from, and make your financial expectations very clear. If you come on board, we will expect a gift of X dollars, and that's either give or get, right? Or in some cases it is give. So come up with those things. And then another thing that I would recommend is having an overview that new board members or board members fill out annually, kind of helping them think through how they can support you. And there's some great examples. If you are a Bonterra client, we have a great example for you in our library. Okay, so let's dive into increasing donations, volunteer hours, and budget. And I see we have a couple of things in chat. Awesome. Just a reminder about our slides will be going out. So if you're looking to increase engagement across the board and you want to raise more money, these are some of the just very simple and quick things that you can do. Working your circle of influence. Have you shaken all of your low-hanging fruit yet? Have you gone to your donors and asked for upgrades and really thought that through? Do you have a broad group of people who are actively out there helping you fundraise? It doesn't all have to sit with you. It really doesn't. How are you showing the impact that you're making that is that compelling case for support? And are you doing things like surveying your base to really understand what they're interested in and how they may want to support you? There's some other things in here. If you're wondering about how to do some of these things, consider working with a coach. Like at Bonterra, we have fundraising and engagement coaches that work one-on-one during the course of the year and beyond to strategize with you on how to scale your fundraising and really dive into certain parts of it. But if you're not a Bonterra client and you're looking for ways, another thing that you can do is bring on a consultant or a coach to do so. I strongly encourage you, because it can really help you focus and test and learn and have that confidence because you have a trusted advisor by you. Another thing around the volunteer hours, there's lots of ideas here on how to do it. The biggest thing is making your volunteer opportunities very clear. Right? We need someone to do this during this time and it will end, and it's trackable and people understand milestones, because the worst thing is for people to go in, not really have a clue what's expected of them. They don't know if they have been successful or failed. There is little follow-up afterwards. So you want to be able to treat these folks as if they are making a difference, and you show that, you're able to impart how they're making a difference, and you really follow up with that gratitude. And then you make it easy for them and for you to share what they have done. A lot of people feel a great sense of pride and joy from volunteering. Make it easy for them to share pictures socially, or to, be part of the story that you're sharing. Not that 85 people went out and volunteered this day, or 10 of them, if they've given permission, name them, link to them. There's things that you can do. Ben, do you have other ideas?
No, I think transparency is great, throughout, and just treating these folks, both volunteers and donors, for what they are, which is, what makes it possible for you to exist as a nonprofit, right? And so not taking them for granted and making sure the communications are open and everything is transparent, I think is the recipe I would put together for increasing engagement.
And as we think about how to increase your budget, I've already mentioned the innovation budget. We've talked a little bit about how to use data, and I would encourage you to visualize data. Don't just throw a bunch of numbers and charts at people, but really think about how to make it very visual and compelling. There are some other things here, but one of the things that I really want to dive into, there's two parts here. One is understanding you and your team's limitations and working to overcome it. Let's face it, when we fail, we often know why. And we probably could have told ourselves why we would fail, a year in advance. Because these are things that we sort of innately know are blockers for us. So it's important to understand what your blockers are and then to have a plan to mitigate them. And so when you know your team's limitations, and I don't mean this in any negative way, right? Like when you know that you have a team who might not be as sophisticated in data or in beautiful PowerPoints or in whatever, think about how you can help your team begin to either build that strength, one, or two, where you might be able to go to get added support or training. We can train, or someone could be shadowing someone else who knows this and can do it. Or we are sharing more broadly, and we're saying, hey, we need some help. So think about how to lean into skill sets that your team has, but also acquire new insights and abilities so that you can overcome some of those challenges that your team might have. And they exist with data. Ben, do you have additional information just around data itself, like how a small nonprofit, a small or medium nonprofit can sort of up level when it comes to, data analysis and really kind of diving into those types of more sophisticated, analyses?
Yeah, I think the curation that you're describing is very important, like where, you don't want data for data's sake. You don't want to just throw a big table of numbers at anybody, right? You want to try to figure out what's important, what and why it's important, what action are you going to take from this number? And then, from that, you can sort of, okay, these are the things that I'm hoping to accomplish. And then therefore, these numbers are important for me to track, and really just aligning yourself to that. And you don't, I like to use an analogy, and I'm just going to go into it because I love the analogy, but like a lot of us think we're enumerate, like we're not very, good with numbers. And I challenge you to think of it differently. You are very good with math. Like if you are able to drive and take a left turn, you're doing some really complicated physics where you're calculating the amount of time you have to cross and the speed and the velocity and your acceleration. You're doing a lot of calculations in your brain that are really complex and hard. What you don't know is how to write that into a language that is built by somebody hundreds of years ago. That's not being bad at math. It's just not understanding the language of math. And I think separating those two things, so that we don't put a blocker in front of us that is not needed, right? Like you understand the concept, right? Like if you want to move something, you got to understand what's happening, and you got to put your thumb in the air and measure it. So that's, I don't know, I kind of going off a
I
little
love
bit there.
that. I love it. We're making a turn. We're doing complex math. That's
Yeah.
fantastic. Can you also share how some organizations survey their base and what they can learn from it?
Yeah, do you mean like donor surveys and try to figure out the sentiment? Yeah, so
donor prospect surveys.
the same thing that we do as a company too, right? Like you want to understand the consumers, the stakeholders, what their opinions are. They can point out areas that you're doing great, which you can help to pour gas on and make it better, or the areas that you're really not doing well, and then you need to address those. And I mean, you don't want to do anything just to please a donor, right? But at the same time, I mean, because what you're trying to do is something higher than that, right? But if you're ignoring the donor, then you're going to have a really hard time getting people aligned with what you're trying to achieve. So it's not that you survey donors and say, oh, well, we really need to make sure this particular thing is working properly, but understanding what it is your constituents, the people that fund you, want. And as long as it's aligned with your mission, achieving it, then that's how I would use surveys.
Yeah, and it's great because then you can go back to your board and share, what the voice of your supporters is like. You can survey your board as well. You can get some insights, and I encourage you when you do surveys to also try to get some prospects as well, because that can really help your perspective. A lot of people will go and they'll say, I know who my donors are. I know what they want, because they're talking to like the 10 donors that give to them all the time and their board members. That is not your entire donor base, folks. It's not even necessarily who you want your donor base to be 5 years, 10 years down the road. So why are we putting so much energy and effort into the things that handful of people are saying and wanting you to do versus going out and really looking at holistically who is interested in supporting you and why? It can be really useful when you're making compelling cases to expand, do new projects, and really go and broaden your prospect base. Budget considerations are here. The surveys really kind of help you understand who your donors are today and then who they might be for the future and how you can begin to bridge that gap, because you're going to continue to have this small pool of donors. They're going to get smaller and smaller and smaller each appeal that you have if you are not bringing in new donors. And the new donors that you're acquiring may or may not be the donors that you see your organization having years down the road. I can remember I worked with a very large national charity years ago who said, I want to understand the personas of my donors who are going to be giving 10 years from now. And I want to be able to start messaging to them now when they are, in their late teens, early 20s. It was an environmental group. And they were like, I want to be able to have the right messages now so that when the time comes that they are ready to give and they are educated, like they have awareness and want to support our environmental organization, we've already been nurturing and priming that pump. So just things to think about as you look at these budget considerations. Let's dive into storytelling. On a scale from 1 to 10, 10 being highest, how would you rate your organization's storytelling ability? So let's have you do that. And I'm going to give you some ideas around that. So Ashley, how's it looking?
Yeah, as it's looking right now, it looks almost like a perfect bell curve in a way, but we've got about split, I would say, leaning somewhere between 6 and 8 is where the majority of folks are falling. We've got a couple of 4s, but somewhere between 6 and 8.
Not bad at all. Kudos
No,
to
not
all of you. Woo. Okay,
bad.
so let's talk about this. Couple essentials for storytelling. Choose a compelling main character. Guess what? Your main character does not have to be the executive director or the president of the board. Please, 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 please. Sometimes that works, but don't do that every single time. Begin to think creatively. Sometimes your main character, if you are an environmental organization, we'll go back to that kind of concept, might be a tree or a bird. You're a youth organization and so maybe it's a basketball that the kids play with after school. It can be this inanimate object that can tell the story of its experience interacting with your service recipients, right? Like the people that you're working with. Mix it up, make it clever. The one thing, so if you were doing an appeal, a letter, right, or a campaign, you might have this story starting from start to finish, and that's an important thing to have in like a direct mail letter. But if you are wanting a more interactive campaign, perhaps you start to tell story through chapters. Think about your favorite shows that you are often watching on TV now. There are seasons. We are watching seasons. We have different characters coming in and they're all really cool and interesting. Why not create a campaign, an integrated fundraising campaign that has different perspectives from your donor, from your service recipient, from the program manager, maybe from the fundraiser, right? But have those little snippets, and they don't have to be long. They can be videos. It could be a little email. It just gives you different perspectives. So get creative. You definitely use visuals and data to help you. um and then have a call to action, and then there's just some ideas about call to action. Your call to action should not be donate now every single time. You want it to be more integrated, more with the other things that you're doing. There's a lot here. These are just ideas around how to execute an integrated marketing approach that is touching your supporters from various touch points. So you could look at that later. There are emotions that you're going to want to trigger as you go through that story. And then there's lots of things on what makes a great fundraising appeal. We're not going to go deep into this, but there are a couple of things that I learned recently that are working right now, and I want to share those with you. One is graphics with movement. So animated GIFs are resonating. Graphics that have hand-drawn elements to them, for some reason, are really working. If you're doing a video appeal, direct, looking at the camera, direct to camera appeal works. Also mentioning if it's a longer campaign and it has multiple touch points, early in that campaign mentioning that, you know, you have been validated by GuideStar, or you have a seal or whatever, can help create a reduced friction later. Like, is this a legit nonprofit that I want to give to? Well, you've already established that. And then the other thing to think about right now is you're planning for this year's campaigns around the election cycle. There's going to be a lot of noise happening in the last half of the year. There's going to be very expensive advertising going on, lots of direct mail hitting people's mailboxes, lots of things. So plan your campaigns accordingly, because you're going to have, it can be very expensive and you could be missed during those times. So don't not do things, but think about that. There's a lot of time savers that we have here just listed to think about. You can go back and look at these later, but just ways that you can sort of be ready at the ready for whenever something occurs, that you can sort of put a fundraising appeal out and do what's called newsjacking, which is looking at the news, having something that resonates with your mission, and then tying that together. Ben, talk with us a little bit about using AI in communications.
Yes, and while we do the poll, there was also a question in there, Kim. We want to try to tackle that question now.
Sure.
But maybe we'll collect the poll while we answer the question. So Angela asked about the board being 70% made up of executive directors from another nonprofit. I was just going to say that for my vantage point, you know, the transparency that I was talking about, I would think, Angela, that there's something that you're seeing in that is making you're making a connection between, you know, the work that your organization does and the work that the organizations that these executive directors work for. Maybe trying to parse it out and being explicit about that connection so that they understand it and see it, and then communicating that, because it might just be that they don't see it from what you see, right? They don't see how interdependent it is. And I don't know, that would be my suggestion, but that's easier said than done. Kimberly, do you have any thoughts?
Yeah, I love that suggestion. And I can truly appreciate this, because I worked at a membership organization where the members were like, hey, I pay dues, so why should I be giving to the foundation? And it's like, well, you're giving to the foundation because we're also doing these awesome community-based projects. So being able to show that bigger picture. Look, I'm a member of AFP, and I give to AFP's foundation because I want to support the concept of, you know, fundraising excellence, right? And having the training and support around it. So I encourage you to have those one-on-one conversations. If there is someone who has never given and they sit on the board, you know, how comfortable would you feel comfortable sitting down with them and having that one-on-one conversation and say, I'm so glad that you're a member of this. I noticed that you haven't given before. Can you share with me why you're not comfortable doing so? Because you want them to give, and you want them to also help advocate for you. And so maybe that's another question. We would really like to begin to partner more with our members to increase the visibility of our organization. How can I do that? Will you help me?
All right, so Ashley, what were the results of the poll?
Yeah, so it seems like folks are either never using AI or very rarely using AI in their work.
Okay, so that's interesting, and kind of what I expected. And so you might ask yourself, and I want to make sure I'm clear we're not just throwing AI into peddle AI and everyone's hot topic. I've been in the data science world for some time, and it's never been as hot as it is right now. And so, being head of data science and talking about the scarcity that we're talking with, that most nonprofits are seeing, and the decline in donors, it's and how AI can help optimize that. I do think it's incumbent upon us to sort of help the nonprofit space. So I'm glad and not glad that only a few people are using AI. And let me explain why you should. But first, before we do, in order to get the trust in the technology, in the tool, you have to understand the warts as well. And here's what we're going to start off with. What do we need to watch out for? AI is not to solve everything. It is not going to take our jobs. It is not, a scary, evil thing that might take over society. It does have these flaws, though. It has hallucinations, which means that it will sometimes say things that are not true. It will make things up. And so therefore, you cannot just let a chatbot or AI go out into the wild and act on its own. You need to watch it, monitor it. A human needs to be involved. You shouldn't share proprietary data. It can bake itself into a large language model, which are these chatbots. And sorry, yes, LLM is a large language model. I should have written that out. I'm sorry. That is the base of what the chatbots do. And what happens is if it builds off of your proprietary data, now you've exposed proprietary data into generations of models that might happen later, and that's not something you want to do. So you want to make sure when you're interacting with a chatbot or a large language model that you look at the security, data security terms and services. It also has biases. There's inherent biases in these things that, based off of us and our own biases that are baked in, and you must be aware and cognizant of that. And then it's overly confident. So you'll start, and you see how good they are. If you start to interact, they're really, really good. And then you start to say, oh, well, I've got this thing's really good. It's saying that this is the true, but it might be hallucinating. Yeah, it has a big vocabulary. Yes, and so you want to you always want to make sure that you're governing yourself. You don't want to like just let it go and start believing the machine. Always double check important points. Always double check the sources and that kind of thing. So we can move on to the next. Those are just the watch outs. Those are the things you must be careful of when you engage. But then I do encourage you for the next slide for everyone to engage in large language models, because they're remarkable with what they can do at the moment right now. And even the storytelling, you could ask a large language model to build out a plan for you for the next 6 weeks, tell it how much time you have, what you're trying to do in fundraising. And it might start off on all those campaigns that Kimberly had up there. It could write it all in no time. Now, you wouldn't just send it out, right? This is where your work has to come out. You go in, you look at it. Okay, this is good, it's bad. You can interact with it. And we'll talk about that in the next slide. But this one here is sort of talking about those large language models, what you're able to do with them. So there are 3 main things you can do. There's fine tuning, which is like something you all will likely not do, but there will be software that you can interact that would allow you to do this, which is like training it off of an existing data set. So one example might be like ChatGPT, where you would throw it toward your website and say, learn how we talk. And it will start to take on your tone over time. It will start to take on the way that you approach certain messaging. And so in that way, you can be fine tuning it. Prompting is a really, really big thing where you want to be able to ask it smart questions. So you say, act as a fundraising development director and develop my fundraising plan for the March. And then you give it additional prompts. I am a domestic violence organization in a rural, X, Y, or Z. And the more information you provide it, the more prompts you provide it, the better it is at producing what you need. And then retrieval augmented generation, RAG, is where you make it only respond to a certain, it can only pick a solution within a certain data set that you provide. And in this way, you can eliminate some of those harms that we were talking about before, right? Because it will only respond within this particular set of data rather than something it's learned or something it's made up. So this is a little bit technical, I'm sorry, but then let's get into the framework and use cases. So we got 4 minutes. I'm going to fly through this. You can use it for research and brainstorming, analyzing, revising. You can use it for each part of these things. There are bullets up here to explain that, but like as you're engaging with a project, you can kind of iterate with your research. Then you can turn into brainstorming, get ideas from the LLM. You could then ask it to analyze, check your own work, criticize your work, and then you can revise your work. So you can use it as an assistant in that way. And we can go on to the next slide because I know we need to leave times for thing. Oh, I thought there was one more, but use cases. Oh yeah, there it is. So for fundraising, you could use it in fundraising copy, renewals, campaigns, newsletters, etc., grant applications, form content, press releases, for marketing, website content, partner solicitations, impact reports. All of these are ways that Gen AI, generative AI, our large language models can help your nonprofit. And I encourage each of you to try it, give it a test. I bet you if you dip your toe in, you're going to find yourself wanting to swim in relative soon. Just make sure you keep those warnings at the forefront of your mind so that you don't make any mistakes.
Great advice. Thank you, Ben. Feel free to ask questions if any of you have them. We are just going to begin our wrap up. So just a reminder that, of course, as you know, fundraising never stops. It doesn't stop after a campaign ends. It's always happening. And there are more folks that can be helping you with your fundraising than you may be employing today. And that might be your staff or your stakeholders or key volunteers, board members. Takeaways I hope you are walking away with today is that data needs to show big picture impact, try to visualize it in easy ways for folks to digest. Increasing gifts and engagement really requires you to build from the base that you have, learn, and then try new things, and begin to go beyond what you just have today into what next looks like. Yes, you can be an expert storyteller, begin to create those chapters, have different voices, and test and learn. And AI is definitely worth testing and learning. That was what we had for our session today. I see a question coming in.
Yeah. Thank you both, Kimberly and Ben. This was a wonderful session. I know I took a lot of key takeaways from the session, so I know folks on the call did as well. While folks kind of get their last minute questions in, since I know we're kind of close to time here, wanted to just kind of say, if you have a question that you think is more geared for like a one-on-one conversation, or if you're interested in learning more about some of our tools and how that can help you all communicate your impact better, I'm just going to launch one final last poll to kind of gain that interest. And like I said, feel free to fill that out and we can have one colleagues reach out to you. But yeah, thank you guys so much for this session. We did have a question come in, Terry. Looks like he might be exploring fundraising platform options. So Terry, would love to have a conversation with you after today's session and get one of my colleagues to connect with you and maybe tell you a little bit about us and how we can help for sure. But wonderful. Yeah, thank you guys so much. I have to say, Ben, it was great, your conversation, your piece, on AI. I know AI can be a scary word for people, it's a scary buzzword. So definitely a lot of helpful insight, and I can take that with me for sure. But yeah, folks, thank you again so much for joining us this afternoon here. Thank you for your engagement and this time. And we hope to see you at the next session. If we didn't get to your question, we do apologize. We can definitely follow up afterwards in an email. But thank you guys for your attendance this afternoon. And like I said, we hope to see you at the next session. Thanks, guys. Bye-bye.
Have a great day.